The bullet shattered the window 3 inches from Joon-ho's head. Glass exploded inward, glittering like deadly snow in the dim light of his penthouse office. He didn't flinch, didn't move. His hand remained steady on the glass of whiskey, amber liquid catching the neon glow of Seoul's skyline behind him. Around the mahogany table, 5 men dove for cover, their expensive suits crumpling against imported Italian marble. But Joon-ho simply turned his head slowly toward the broken window, his dark eyes calculating the trajectory, the distance, the amateur angle of the shot. "Clean it up," he said, his voice cold as winter steel, "and find out which idiot thinks killing me is still possible." This was his world, violence dressed in Armani, death served with aged scotch. At 32, Kwon Joon-ho controlled half of Seoul's underground empire, smuggling routes, luxury forgeries, protection networks that stretched from Gangnam to Busan. Men feared him, women wanted him, enemies died thinking about him, but the truth nobody saw was simpler and far more dangerous. Joon-ho was empty, hollowed out by years of survival, by the weight of a crown made of blood and betrayal. He'd killed his emotions the same night he killed his father's murderer, and he'd been successfully dead inside ever since. Until her. Across the city, in a cramped studio apartment that smelled of kimchi and mold, Adanna Okafor was fighting a different kind of war. The eviction notice trembled in her hands, red ink screaming a deadline she couldn't meet. 3 months in Seoul. 3 months of rejection, racist landlords, employers who took one look at her dark skin and suddenly had no positions available. Her economics degree from Lagos meant nothing here. Her fluent English was useless. Her dreams of a better life were dying one closed door at a time. She'd left Nigeria with hope burning in her chest, her mother's funeral money tucked into her bra, a student visa that promised opportunity, but career had shown her a harder truth. Survival here meant invisibility, and she was anything but invisible. 6 feet tall, skin like polished mahogany, hair in natural coils she refused to straighten. She stood out everywhere she went, and in a country that prized conformity, standing out was a death sentence. Adanna crushed the eviction notice and threw it across the room. Then she opened her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. If legal jobs wouldn't take her, she'd find another way. She'd been tracking patterns for weeks now, shipment schedules at Incheon Port, customs official rotations, security camera blind spots. Not for anything illegal, just information. Information was currency, and she was about to spend it. The underground club was called Obsidian, and it didn't officially exist. No sign outside, no listing online, just a steel door in an alley off Itaewon that only opened if the right people knocked. Adanna had watched it for 3 nights, memorizing faces, knotting the pattern. Important men went in. Broken men came out, and every single one of them looked over their shoulder before they left. She knocked. The door opened 6 inches. A man's face appeared, scarred and suspicious. He looked her up and down with undisguised contempt. "Lost, sister." "I need to speak to whoever runs this place," Adanna said, in careful Korean, the accent she'd been practicing for months. "I have information worth money." The man laughed. "We don't buy information from." "There's a shipment coming into Dock 7 tomorrow at 3 a.m., she interrupted, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "Customs official park will be conveniently absent. The containers marked automotive parts contain something else, something that belongs to someone who doesn't know it's being stolen." The laughter died. The door opened wider. They put her in a room with no windows and 1 chair. Adanna sat, forcing her hands to stay relaxed in her lap, fighting the urge to run. She'd gambled everything on this moment. If she was wrong about what those containers held, she was dead. If she was right but couldn't prove her value, she was dead. The only way out was through. The door opened. Joon-ho walked in like he owned gravity itself. Tall, lean, dressed in black from collar to shoes, his face could have been carved from marble for all the emotion it showed. But his eyes, those eyes catalogued everything about her in 3 seconds. Her worn shoes, her straight spine, the way her gaze met his without flinching. "You're not from here," he said in English, smooth and unaccented. "Neither is your shipment," Adanna replied. Something flickered across his face. Interest maybe, or warning. "Explain." Adanna stood, slowly, deliberately. She walked to the wall and began drawing with her finger on the dusty surface. A map of the port, container positions, guard rotations. Your distribution manager is skimming. He's using your customs contacts to bring in his own product, hiding it in your legitimate shipments. Tomorrow's delivery has 20 containers. 18 are yours, 2 aren't. He's been doing this for 3 months, small enough amounts that your inventory wouldn't flag it, but it adds up. Joon-ho watched her draw, watched her think. And you know this how? I watch, I calculate, I notice patterns. Adanna turned to face him. I spent 6 weeks tracking port activity because I needed to understand how things move in this city. Your operation is precise, almost mathematical, but 3 months ago there was a variance, small but consistent. Container weights off by exactly 12% on every third Thursday. Different customs officials, same pattern. That's not coincidence, that's theft. Silence stretched between them. Adanna could hear her own heartbeat, feel sweat beginning to bead at her hairline. She'd laid her cards on the table. Now she waited to see if she'd bet right. What do you want? Joon-ho asked. A job, money, a chance. I don't hire foreigners. You do now. Joon-ho almost smiled, almost. Tomorrow, 3 a.m., you come to the port. If you're right, we talk. If you're wrong, he let the silence finish the sentence. I'm not wrong, Adanna said. She wasn't. At 3:07 a.m., surrounded by shipping containers and the smell of salt water, Joon-ho's men cut open the 2 containers Adanna had identified. Inside, beneath a false floor of automotive parts, they found 200 kilograms of uncut heroin that nobody in Joon-ho's organization had ordered. His distribution manager was dragged forward, already bleeding from a broken nose, screaming denials until Joon-ho showed him the shipping manifests with his forged signature. Adanna watched from beside Joon-ho's car, trying not to shake. She'd been right. She was alive. But the casual violence unfolding in front of her was a reminder of what world she'd just entered. When the distribution manager was dragged away, still screaming, Joon-ho turned to her. You start Monday, security analysis. You find problems in my operation, you tell me before they become expensive. He handed her a card with nothing but a phone number. And Adanna, he said her name like he'd known it all along. Don't make me regret trusting a stranger. I could say the same thing, she replied. This time he did smile, barely, but it was there. The next 3 months rewrote both their lives. Adanna moved into a company apartment in Gangnam, small but clean, with windows that actually locked and water that ran hot. She worked 16-hour days, analyzing shipping routes, security protocols, financial patterns in Joon-ho's empire. And everywhere she looked, she found inefficiencies, leaks, small corruptions that added up to massive losses. She documented everything in reports so detailed and precise that even Joon-ho's most skeptical lieutenants had to respect them. But it was the quiet moments that changed things. The late nights when everyone else had gone home and it was just her and Joon-ho in his office, going over numbers. The way he actually listened when she spoke. The way he never once made her feel foreign or less than, only judged her by the quality of her work. And slowly, carefully, she began to see past the cold exterior to the man underneath. The one who worked until exhaustion to prove his worth. The one who never slept, because nightmares waited when he did. The one who'd built an empire out of survival and didn't know how to live any other way. Why economics? He asked one night, 3 months into her employment. They were alone in his office, the city glittering beyond the windows, a bottle of soju between them. Adanna considered her answer carefully. Control. In Lagos, my family was poor, not starving poor, but the kind where one bad month meant disaster. I watched my mother calculate every naira, trying to make impossible math work. When she got sick, the numbers stopped adding up. Economics felt like, if I could understand the systems, maybe I could beat them. Did you? She died anyway. Cancer doesn't care about economic theory. Joon-ho poured her more soju. My father built this organization. He was brilliant and brutal and paranoid. When I was 16, one of his own men put 3 bullets in him over a territory dispute. I found the man, killed him with my father's own gun, took over the empire before the blood dried. He drank, his expression unchanged. 17 years later, I still don't know if I'm running his legacy or his prison. Maybe both, Adanna said softly. Maybe that's the point. He looked at her then, really looked, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, two people who'd survived by being harder than their circumstances, suddenly seeing their reflection in someone else's eyes. It was dangerous, they both knew it. They fell into it anyway. The shift was subtle at first. Joon-ho started requesting her presence at meetings where her expertise wasn't needed. She started staying late even when her work was finished. Their conversations drifted from business to philosophy to memories they'd never shared with anyone else. He told her about killing for the first time and how easy it had been, how much that scared him. She told him about the day she decided to leave Nigeria, standing at her mother's grave and promising to become someone her mother could be proud of, even if she had to cross oceans to do it. "Do you regret it?" Joon-ho asked, "coming here?" "Ask me again in a year," Adanna said, but the way she looked at him gave a different answer. His lieutenants noticed. Of course they noticed. A foreign woman with the boss's ear, making more money than men who'd served for decades, living in company housing, arriving and leaving with Joon-ho's personal security. The whispers started carefully, then grew bolder. "She's using him, she's a spy. She's corrupting his judgment." But nobody dared say it to Joon-ho's face because the last person who'd questioned his decisions publicly had disappeared, and everyone knew better than to repeat that mistake. Except Min Seo. Joon-ho's cousin had been angling for more power since they were teenagers, convinced he deserved a larger share of the empire. He'd been patient, strategic, waiting for the right moment to make his move. Adanna's presence gave him that moment. He began building alliances, carefully turning Joon-ho's organization against itself, using prejudice and fear as weapons. "She's changing him," Min Seo said to the gathered lieutenants in a private meeting Joon-ho didn't know about. "Making him soft, distracted. When was the last time he ordered a hit? When was the last time anyone feared him? He's so busy playing house with his African pet that he's forgotten what we built this empire on." The poison spread, slowly, quietly, dangerously. Adanna felt it, the way guards watched her differently now, the way conversations stopped when she entered rooms, the way her apartment building security started asking for her ID every single day despite knowing exactly who she was. She didn't tell Joon-ho immediately because she wanted to be sure, wanted to trace the source before making accusations. So she started documenting again, watching, tracking patterns of hostility, finding the common thread. It led to Min Seo. But before she could present her findings, everything exploded. She came home one evening to find her apartment destroyed. Not ransacked, destroyed. Furniture overturned, clothes shredded, her laptop smashed beyond repair. And on the wall, painted in red that looked too much like blood, two words in Korean, "Go home." Adanna stood in the wreckage of her life, hands shaking, feeling the familiar weight of powerlessness crushing down. This was the price of reaching above her station. This was the reminder that she didn't belong. She could be brilliant, valuable, essential. None of it mattered if they wanted her gone. Her phone rang. Joon-ho. "Where are you?" His voice was tight, controlled. "Home, or what's left of it." "Stay there, I'm coming." He arrived with 4 armed men, took one look at the destruction, and his face went absolutely still. That terrible, dangerous stillness that preceded violence. "Pack what you need. You're moving to my penthouse tonight." "Joon-ho, I can handle." "This isn't a request, Adanna. Someone in my organization just declared war on you, which means they declared war on me. Until I find out who, you stay where I can protect you." She wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence, prove she didn't need saving. But the truth was simpler and more frightening. She was terrified, not of the violence itself, but of how easily they could erase her, how little her life mattered here. So she packed her bag and followed Joon-ho into his world completely. Living in Joon-ho's penthouse changed everything. Suddenly, there was no separation between professional and personal. No space to pretend their connection was purely business. They had breakfast together, worked late into the night in comfortable silence, fell asleep on opposite ends of his massive couch watching Korean dramas. She was finally starting to understand without subtitles. And slowly, in the quiet moments between crisis and violence, something neither of them had believed possible began to grow. Love, terrifying and inconvenient, and absolutely real. It happened in pieces, the way Joon-ho made sure her favorite tea was always stocked, the way Adanna learned to read his silences, to know when he needed space and when he needed presence. The first time he actually laughed, at one of her stories about navigating Korean culture, and she realized she'd never heard that sound from him before. The night she had a nightmare about her mother and woke to find him sitting beside her bed, not touching, just there. "You don't have to," she started. "I know," he said, "sleep." She did. For the first time in months, she slept without fear. But their enemies weren't sleeping. Min Seo had been watching, waiting, building his case. He knew he couldn't attack Joon-ho directly. His cousin was too powerful, too entrenched. But Adanna, she was the perfect pressure point. Foreign, vulnerable, the visible symbol of everything he was trying to convince the organization was wrong with Joon-ho's leadership. So he made his move. It started with an anonymous tip to immigration authorities. Adanna's student visa had expired 2 months ago, something she'd been in the process of rectifying through company sponsorship, but paperwork took time. The authorities showed up at Joon-ho's building with deportation orders. Joon-ho's lawyers fought back with injunctions and briefs, buying time, but the message was clear. Someone powerful wanted her gone. Then came the media. Somehow, photos of Adanna entering and leaving Joon-ho's penthouse appeared on celebrity gossip sites with suggestive headlines about Korea's most dangerous bachelor and his mysterious African mistress. The articles were carefully crafted to seem intrigued rather than racist, but the comment sections revealed the truth. Thousands of people calling her gold digger, foreigner, prostitute, demanding she leave Korea, threatening violence if she didn't. Adanna watched it unfold with a strange detachment. She'd known, somehow, that it would come to this, that reaching for something better meant painting a target on herself, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. "We'll fix this," Joon-ho said, his voice hard. "I'll find who leaked those photos, I'll make them." "And then what?" Adanna interrupted. "You make them disappear, someone else takes their place. You can't kill prejudice, Joon-ho. You can't threaten ignorance into submission. These people don't want me here, and nothing you do will change that. So what, you give up, you let them win." "I'm saying maybe I was never meant to win this particular game." She turned to face him, and he saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before, defeat. "I came to Korea for a better life. Instead, I became someone's target. Maybe it's time to admit this was a mistake." "Don't," Joon-ho crossed the room to her, grabbed her shoulders. "Don't let them make you small again. You're the smartest person I've ever met. You rebuilt my organization from the ground up. You see solutions where everyone else sees problems. He stopped, the words catching in his throat. "I'm what?" she whispered. "Mine's you're mine, and I don't let go of what's mine." Adanna laughed, bitter and broken. "You can't own people, Joon-ho. That's not how love works." The word hung between them. Love. Neither had said it before, too careful, too afraid. But now it was there, real and undeniable, and completely impossible. "I know," Joon-ho said quietly. "I know I can't keep you if you want to go. I know I'm asking you to stay in a country that treats you like garbage for a man who lives in darkness. I know it's not fair, but I'm asking anyway. Stay, fight with me, let me—" He stopped again, struggling. "Let me try to deserve you." Before she could answer, his phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, he answered, his eyes never leaving hers. "What?" His expression changed, went cold, lethal. "When?" A pause. "How many?" Another pause. "Lock down everything, I'm coming." He hung up, looked at Adanna with something like grief. "Min Seo just made a move on the Busan territory. He's got half the southern operations backing him, claiming I'm unfit to lead. He's forcing a vote. If he gets majority support from the lieutenants, he takes over." "This is about me," Adanna said. It wasn't a question. "This is about power. You're just the excuse he needed." Joon-ho pulled away from her, already shifting into combat mode. "I have to go. Handle this. The security team will stay with you." "Let me come." "Absolutely not. If Min Seo gets his hands on you." "I'm not hiding while you fight my war, Joon-ho." This isn't your war, it's mine, it's always been mine. He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. Stay here, stay safe. When I come back, we'll figure out the rest. He kissed her, hard and desperate and full of things neither could say. Then he was gone, and Adanna was alone with security guards who wouldn't meet her eyes and the sick certainty that everything was about to fall apart. She lasted 2 hours before she broke protocol, made a phone call to a contact she'd been cultivating since her second week in Seoul, a customs official who owed her a favor, got the information she needed, slipped out through the service entrance while the guards were changing shifts, took a taxi to Incheon, to the shipping company that handled Min Seo's private imports. If this was about power, she'd hit him where it hurt. It took her 90 minutes to break into the office, another 40 to find what she needed in the computer systems. Min Seo had been careful, but not careful enough. He'd been running a side operation for years, human trafficking through shipping containers. Girls from Southeast Asia brought in as cargo, sold to brothels across Korea. The evidence was all there, hidden in false manifests and shell company transfers. Evidence that would destroy him not just in Joon-ho's organization, but with the law. Adanna downloaded everything to a flash drive, sent copies to 3 different secure locations. Then she called Joon-ho. "Where are you?" he answered, voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Incheon, I found." "Get out of there now. Min Seo knows you're gone. He's sent people." Adanna heard footsteps in the hallway outside, heavy boots, multiple men, her heart kicked into overdrive. Joon-ho. "Stay on the line, I'm coming, just hide and..." The door exploded inward. 4 men, armed, professional. They had her on the ground in seconds, the phone clattering away. She heard Joon-ho screaming her name through the speaker as they zip-tied her wrists. Then a boot connected with her ribs, and the world went white with pain. When she could breathe again, one of them hauled her up by her hair. "Boss wants to talk to you." They dragged her to a warehouse 20 minutes away, windowless, soundproof, the kind of place where people disappeared. Min Seo was waiting, dressed in an expensive suit, drinking whiskey like this was a business meeting. He smiled when they threw Adanna at his feet. "The famous Adanna Okafor, my cousin's little obsession." He crouched down, grabbed her chin. "Do you know how much trouble you've caused? How much of my carefully laid plans you've ruined just by existing?" "Good," Adanna spat blood. "Hope I ruined more." Min Seo backhanded her. Her head snapped sideways, ears ringing. "You don't get to talk. You're not Korean, you're not family. You're nothing but a whore who got lucky for a few months. And now," he stood, brushed off his pants, "now you're a message. When Joon-ho finds what's left of you, he'll understand what happens when he forgets who he is, when he goes soft." Adanna's mind raced through options. The flash drive was still in her pocket. They'd searched her but missed it, too focused on weapons. If she could just stall long enough for Joon-ho to arrive. If she could. "He won't go soft," she said. "He'll burn your entire world down. You think you know him? You think you've seen what he's capable of? You have no idea what's coming for you. Big talk for someone who's about to die." "I'm not afraid of you." It was true, facing death, Adanna found she wasn't afraid at all. She'd crossed an ocean for a chance at life. She'd built something real in a place that hated her. She'd found love in the last place anyone would look for it. If this was the end, at least she'd lived on her own terms. At least she'd mattered. The door exploded. Not opened, exploded. Metal and splinters flying inward, followed by gunfire that turned the warehouse into a war zone. Adanna hit the ground, covering her head as Min Seo's men returned fire. Through the chaos, she saw him, Joon-ho moving like death itself, firing with mechanical precision. 2 men down, 3, 4. His own security team flanking him, clearing the room with professional efficiency. And his face, God, his face, utterly devoid of mercy. Min Seo tried to run, made it 10 feet before Joon-ho put 2 bullets in his legs. He went down screaming. Joon-ho walked to where Adanna lay, stepped over her protectively, and put the gun to his cousin's head. "Give me one reason," Joon-ho said, voice dead calm, "why I shouldn't paint this floor with your brain." "Joon-ho," Adanna's voice stopped him. "Wait." She pulled herself to her feet, ribs screaming in protest, pulled the flash drive from her pocket. Better idea. 3 days later, Min Seo was in a police station being charged with human trafficking. The evidence Adanna had found was airtight. The media was having a field day, and Joon-ho's organization was his again, minus the 6 lieutenants who'd sided with Min Seo and were currently reconsidering their life choices in various secure locations. But none of that mattered to Adanna. What mattered was the conversation she was having with Joon-ho in his penthouse, both of them battered and exhausted and facing an impossible choice. Immigration is still pushing for deportation, she said quietly. Your lawyers bought me 2 weeks. After that, unless I have legal grounds to stay, I'm gone. Joon-ho was silent for a long moment. Then, marry me. Adanna's head snapped up. What? Marry me, spouse visa, legal grounds, problem solved. He said it like he was proposing a business merger, but his hands were shaking. Joon-ho, that's not, you can't just. Why not? I love you, you love me. We work together better than I've worked with anyone. You're brilliant and fearless and you make me feel human again. He crossed to her, took her hands. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. I know I'm asking you to tie yourself to a criminal in a country that doesn't want you. But I'm asking anyway. Marry me, stay. Let me spend the rest of my life trying to build a world where you belong. Adanna felt tears on her face. You're insane. Probably, is that a yes? I came here for a better life. I know. I don't know if this counts as better. I know. You make terrible decisions. Constantly. Yes. The word was barely a whisper, but Joon-ho heard it. He kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning, like she was the answer to questions he'd been asking his whole life, like she was home. They got married 3 days later. No ceremony, just paperwork and witnesses and Joon-ho's lawyer ensuring everything was airtight. The immigration case disappeared overnight, money and influence opening doors that had been slammed in Adanna's face for months. She hated that it worked that way, hated that privilege could erase struggles that had nearly destroyed her. But she took the victory anyway, because survival meant taking what you could get. The organization adjusted, slowly, grudgingly. Some members left, unable to stomach serving under a Korean man married to an African woman. Good riddance, Joon-ho said. We don't need racists in our business. Others stayed, won over by Adanna's continued effectiveness. And gradually, impossibly, a new normal emerged. Adanna became Joon-ho's true partner, not just in business but in everything. She restructured the entire organization, moving them away from the most violent operations and into more sustainable criminal enterprises. Money laundering, luxury counterfeiting, high-end smuggling, things that still skirted the law but didn't require body counts. Joon-ho fought her at first, convinced it would make them weak, but the profits spoke for themselves, and slowly he began to change. They bought a house outside Seoul, something with a garden. Joon-ho had never cared about gardens before, but Adanna filled it with flowers from Nigeria and Korea both, creating something hybrid and beautiful. They talked about the future, about maybe one day going legitimate, about children, though that conversation terrified them both for different reasons. It wasn't perfect. Adanna still faced racism every day, still got stared at in restaurants, still dealt with people who thought she'd married for money or status, still woke up some mornings feeling like she was drowning in a culture that would never fully accept her. But she had Joon-ho, had purpose, had a life she'd built with her own hands. And Joon-ho was learning to live again. The emptiness that had defined him for 17 years was filling with something like happiness. He smiled more, laughed more, started believing that maybe he was more than his father's legacy, that maybe he could be someone worth loving. 6 months after the wedding, they stood on their back porch watching the sunset, Adanna's head on Joon-ho's shoulder. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. Everything you gave up to stay here. Adanna thought about Lagos, about the woman she'd been, about all the doors that had slammed in her face and the one that had finally opened, about finding home in the last person anyone would have predicted. Ask me again in a year, she said, smiling. But they both knew the answer. Love had won, not easily, not perfectly, but definitively. And in a world built on power and violence and impossible odds, that was the only victory that mattered. Joon-ho kissed the top of her head. Thank you. For what? Stealing my heart. I didn't know I still had one to steal. Well, Adanna said, lacing her fingers through his. Good thing I'm excellent at finding things people thought were lost. Behind them, Seoul glittered in the fading light. A city that had tried to break her. A city she'd conquered anyway. And somewhere in the garden, Nigerian roses bloomed beside Korean orchids, proof that even the most unlikely combinations could create something beautiful. If this story moved you, if you felt Adanna's struggle and Joon-ho's transformation, please subscribe to this channel. Hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me which moment touched your heart the most. Your support helps me bring you more stories of love that defies borders, breaks barriers, and proves that home isn't a place. It's the person who sees you, truly sees you, and chooses you anyway. Thank you for watching.